Okay, so we're gonna sharpen Western style Japanese knives with a proper stone. You can get, I mean, I recommend, most people have crappy knives. And so if you're actually gonna cook a lot and have a great cooking experience, I recommend you get a new knife. If you don't already have something like this, if you have a Wusthof or a Henkel's or something that you global that you got for your wedding registry and you think it's great because it's a great brand, it's just really not that great. So I would recommend something like this. These are 70-30 grind, more on that in a moment. You can buy these Western style Japanese knives at Korin in New York, KORIN.com. They do mail order. Once you buy one of these knives, it'll change your life. They're about $100 to $200, something like that, but far superior to what you're gonna get at Bloomingdale's. And if you keep it sharp, it'll come razor sharp, like from the factory. If you look at it, you almost cut yourself, but you can also keep it really sharp and it'll always be sharper than what you're used to, and it'll just always be better than what you're used to. Okay, so if you get one of these, they come 70-30 grind right-handed knife, which means that it's 70 degrees that way and 30 that way instead of a normal 45 and 45, right? So you figure a normal knife is an ambidextrous knife. Alexa, stop. A normal knife is an ambidextrous knife, but these are right-handed knives. If you need a left-handed knife, the master sharpeners at Korin can turn a right-handed knife into a left-handed knife. I'm not going to show you that. I'm just going to show you about proper care for your knife. Once you get them, I would say that I cook most days, and I sharpen my knives probably at best seasonally, probably more like twice a year. I should do it a little bit more than that, but they're always sharper than any of my friends' knives, so I think it's good enough. Proper stone you also get at Korin. This is a 6,000, 1,000 grit stone. So 1,000 grit on this side, 6,000 on this side. The 6,000, the higher the number, the finer it is. The lower the number, the coarser it is. This 6,000 side is really kind of like my countertop. And that's just for finishing. This will be the sharpening side, the 1,000. If you start getting a number lower than 1,000, you're starting to get into a really rough stone that's going to really screw up your knife. So I recommend 1,000, 6,000. This is a stone fixer. If you nick your stone, which you can, especially on this side because the knife is so sharp, this can buff the burrs out of it. I rarely use this, but if you wind up getting nicks in your stone, buy a stone fixer and buff it out, okay? I've had this in water for a couple of hours. It's a wet stone, it's a water stone, so you want it wet, okay? There's a couple different schools of thought. You can go this way, you can go this way. I generally go this way. And what I want to do is try to maintain that angle. Always keep it wet, right? Now I'm going to have more of an angle on this side than on this side. And if you look at it, you can see it. I mean, I can see that tapers in. That's the 70. And that's almost flat. That's the 30, right? And so, just for sake of argument, here, actually, we'll go this way. I'm going to put this up here, so I'm going to continue to add some water. I have a little grip pad so that I'm not moving around much. Actually, it's better here. And I've got a towel because this gets a little bit wet. All right, so get that wet. And I'm going to go ahead and put it, if you look at the angle from the back side, let me do it this way. I've got an angle about like that, right? That's about the angle of my edge. So I take that angle and maintain that angle. I got 3 fingers, I'm right-handed as we know, because it's a right-handed knife. 3 fingers from my right hand, just keeping mild pressure to control the knife. Oh, for my left hand, I'm sorry, my right hand is doing all the work. Right now, what I'm doing is just getting this lower part of the knife. You can hear a little bit of scrape, right? And now I'll get the upper part of the knife. Korin has these dudes who, are totally decked out in like the Japanese robes and stuff and kind of look like small, medium-sized emperor type looking guys, and they are truly master sharpeners. And they'll do, it's kind of like, I can tune skis to a certain extent for my own use, but I'm not gonna tune Michaela Schifrin's skis. Like, the person who does that is a true expert. So if you ever need real knife work done, or you just want it totally perfect, you can send your knives into them and they'll do it for you, or go into the store and you can watch the dude do it, and it's pretty amazing. But just for your own basic maintenance, you can do this at home, and it makes a big difference. So I'm getting the tip. You can see the knife is rounded a little bit, so this bottom flatter part is easier than this rounded part. But I'm still just maintaining that same edge. And really, I'm pushing out. I'm coming back to be able to push out. I'm not grinding back at me because I don't want to catch the edge, right? So all that movement is really grinding by pushing out and just lightly pulling back in to be able to get those. Okay, now I can do the other side. If I hadn't sharpened this in 6 months, I've sharpened this fairly recently, so I'd do a lot more than that. But for sake of this video, I'm just going to show you how that goes. Do that like 5, 6, 7 times as much as I just did, and you're going to have a pretty sharp knife. Now this side's a much less of an angle, you can see, right? A lot of people will, say like, oh, take a piece of paper or whatever to see if their knife is sharp, or you never do this. That's like really bad. If you know how to do this, that's really sharp. I can feel it bite. So, if you know how to do that, do that. Tomato is good, obviously, if you can just easily cut through a tomato. It pierces the skin just by touching it. I like chives. If you cut chives, they should not crush at all. They should slice, so rather than crunch, crunch, crunch. If you're crunching chives or scallions, it's certainly overdue for you to sharpen your knife. Okay, that's very sharp. People often use a knife steel, right? You see that in kitchens, this steel, the rod, that's like realigning the ions or whatever on the end of your knife. I think it's BS. I've never really seen much of a use for it. I think on those heavy German knives that just aren't very good, it might have some effect, but it would destroy a knife like this, so don't do a steel. You can also look down the blade of your knife, and you can look up in the light and you can see if you have any nicks, and this one's pretty good. If you have any significant nicks, again, send it to a master sharpener, but if you have little tiny nicks, you can sharpen them out just by doing this a little bit more. I always wipe it with the towel, and you can see that is metal from having been ground, right? So that comes off. This one here, same deal. The blade is a little bit different shape. This is technically a poultry knife. It's a Suisun. This one's Toji Haro. I call this the Cadillac. I've had this knife for almost 20 years, and it's just bulletproof. It's so good. It's so sharp. It's so awesome. And for me, when I got it, it was like the Cadillac of knives, and so that's why I call it the Cadillac. This one, and this is like 9 inches, something like that. Any bigger than that is like kind of Napoleon complex. Smaller than that really depends on your size. I'm 6'1", 6'2". I've got pretty big hands. That's a good size knife for me. This is what I use for most everything. If I'm doing smaller tasks, I'll use this Suisun, which is technically a poultry knife, but I just bought it as a smaller all-purpose chef's knife. And my wife uses this one quite a bit. She's got a much smaller hand than I do. It's funny because she's left-handed and this is a right-handed knife, but it's still so much sharper than anything else that it works just fine. So this one's got a little bit flatter blade, so I can sharpen it a little bit more efficiently because I really don't have to do much on the tip. But same deal. I said that I sometimes do this, right? And so, right, I can do it oriented that way as well. And really that's it. It's like the trickiest part is getting the right angle, and you don't have to overthink it. If you sharpen your knife that was 70-30 to 65-35 or 67-33 or whatever, it doesn't matter. You'll be fine. Just try to get that angle. A lot of people say you stack a couple of pennies, right, in here, and that'll like get you the right angle, or a couple of dimes. I think that's kind of BS. You just need to try to look at the blade and look at the angle and try to get that angle. You don't need a protractor. You don't need anything else. That's about the angle I'm looking for on the high side. That's about the angle I'm looking for on the low side. And you just keep your right hand doing all the work and the left hand with those 3 fingers just to stabilize. And if you watched closely, I'm not really losing this angle. And I'm also not putting in a lot of effort. It's really pretty easy. When you're finished, then you turn this over, right? And this is your 1,000 grit. And this is, 6,000 grit. And this, you'll hear when I do this, almost nothing, right? No grind. That's really just buffing out the blade and making it nice and polished and beautiful. It's something I do. It's something that's done. It's something you probably don't really have to do a whole lot. If you saw one of those little nicks or whatever, maybe this will take care of it. But this side is the one where I'll nick the stone more often because it's so easy just to dig in. I've just sharpened the other side. And so you just be careful of that. Especially, don't ever do this because that's where you'll nick it on the side. Over time, your stone will bow a little bit, and that's okay. I mean, that might be time for another stone, but I've had this stone as long as I've had this knife, and it's still flat and great. So the stone cost $100, $150. It's well worth it. The knives obviously are well worth it. And, like any knife, it's only as sharp as how you keep it. So I recommend doing this twice a year and you'll be happy, 3 times a year and you'll be a little bit happier. And that's it. Let me know if you have any questions.